Well, that's okay. They're not going to be super. Hi, I'm Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Rakedahl. Thanks for joining us here and appreciate you all tuning into the second conversations that we're going to have around significant innovations in K-12 education in the state of Washington. I want to take you back 5 years ago when we first got into this role and I was elected for the very first time. We put an emphasis on transformational policies. And at the time, we were all dealing with McCleary. We were making sure that that was our highest priority funding. But if you remember, we said there's things public education has to do to continue to be ahead of the curve and meet the needs of families and students. One of those powerful things for us was really reimagining the high school system itself. Is it 4 years where every student takes the same thing? We've added from a 19 credit to a 21 credit to a now 24 credit high school diploma. We've added the rigidity of this thing so that some students don't feel they have the flexibility that they used to. We said at the time, and we've been working since then, on how do we make the last 2 years of high school not about 2 years of the same thing for everyone, but really transitional work. We have amazing systems that allow students to take college credit while they're in high school. But we've been working to build other strategies for students whose primary pathway isn't straight to a selective university. Our work on the High School and Beyond plan has been evolving and building out with great partnerships that are bipartisan. We've worked on graduation pathways where students can now demonstrate that they've got a post-secondary plan, including military service, apprenticeship, straight to work. Today, we unveil the next significant step in that, a huge opportunity for young people to take more control over their time. When we think about their time versus the state time, I want to make sure we spend a little energy in that. But let's talk about our students right now who work. In the state of Washington, we've got about 150,000 or so high school juniors and seniors. These are students primarily over the age of 16, finishing their last 2 years. About a third of them, 45 to 50,000, work. They've always been working. Lots of us did jobs in high school where we worked. Maybe it was for a family member. Maybe it was in formal retail. Maybe it was in even manufacturing and other sectors of our economy. But students have been working forever. The challenge is, for years, we've had programs that have allowed them to earn some high school credit. But as you can see here, near the bottom, we've only got 6,000 or 7,000 of those 50,000 students earning any high school credit, even though that is how they choose to spend their time. Some have to work to support their families. Some choose to work as part of their future. Every one of the students who are participating in work, however, they are learning powerful skills that we try to replicate in classrooms at times, and often we cannot replicate outside of the work environment. Work itself is valuable. It's got powerful learning that happens within it. Our state does have a robust graduation system, as I said, 24 credits. 17 of those are quite foundational and prescribed. All of our students will pursue those. They get some choices within a math sequence or a science sequence, but essentially those 17 credits are fixed for all of our students. For those students who are really pursuing access to a university after high school, 3 of their credits on the right side there are also pretty well prescribed. 2 world language, 1 additional art credit. And some of our colleges and universities would recommend that students use their 4 flexible elective credits over there to also add coursework that will strengthen their application to selective institutions. To this day, we have students navigating this complex system. It's consistent across the state. But if we had been in school 20 years ago, you would have seen a very different system. Fewer of these core foundational credits, more elective credits, and more options for students. But if you remember back, we've always had students working. So what happened to the young folks whose course schedule was more prescribed, where they had fewer elective choices, but still needed to work, especially in a world where we're stretching income inequality, where more of our families are struggling. And we see that in a growing number of free and reduced price lunch students who are eligible. They don't shed their financial distress just because they become high school students. And in fact, lots of them turn to work. So our proposal today, which we are very excited about, is going to lay out the details on an option for students to use those 4 elective credits in ways that are significantly more powerful for their particular post-high school plan and graduation. And here it is. The state of Washington is going to create a single course code across all of our districts that students can sign into like they would any class when they're building their schedule after the age of 16, primarily their junior, senior year. They will get credit for working any work that is qualified work, that is documented work, that is essentially earning a wage. It isn't that we're going to allow some employers to do it and not others. This is to honor all work, manufacturing, retail, food services. Work is powerful, and it's got powerful learning. It's for students age 16 and over. It is for those elective credits only. This is very, very important. We have high expectations in this state. It's why we are a high performing state academically. So students won't be eligible in this program for those core 17 foundational credits, but for the 4 elective credits where they have tremendous flexibility today. It is capped at 4 credits. It cannot be more than 2 in any year, basically to their junior year, to their senior year. And we don't expect students to get to those 4 credit loads very often, but some might choose to do that. Most are probably on track for 1 credit a year to help flex up their schedule. Students can earn 1 elective credit for every 360 hours of work. So every 360 hours, 1 elective credit. So 180 hours, a half a credit. Students are essentially going to sign up for this like they would any class. They'll say, one of my electives, I want to be work, and that essentially builds into their master schedule. If you think about it, in the beginning, this is probably a student who's already working. They're going to probably stick with their regular periods, but it's possible in the future that they can choose periods 1 through 5. Or if they are working late and closing, or they've got a complicated job and building schoolwork on top of that, then maybe they're going to choose periods 2 through 6 to go to school. Others might stick with a regular schedule and have an opening in the middle of their day. They're working in the evening, but 3rd period or 4th period is considered their work credit. And maybe they get time in the school day then to focus on their other coursework. Schools will obviously have a significant role to play. They're signing students up, they're verifying their employment, they're checking in with the student to see how it's going. We're building meaningful relationships, so we're actually engaging with students differently. Today, 50,000 students go to work, and there's very little conversation on, is this impacting your academics, and how's it going, and what are you learning, and what are you bringing to the job, and how are you developing? We can build more relationship around this because it's a regular course, even though the work is done outside of school and at different hours. Every course in the state of Washington has a certificated teacher who's the teacher of record. So that won't change. There will be teachers assigned to cohorts of students who work. And that allows us to continue apportionment payments to districts. They've got a big job to do in monitoring this, reaching out to employers, checking in. Hey, I've got a student who's working for you. How's it going? This kind of relationship between the business community, especially our small employers, and our students who want to work, and our schools who are trying to round out what it means to be a learner, this is a really powerful combination. One that is barely in its infancy and quite complicated today. We think we can open this up significantly to more students. This is a process that only requires rulemaking. I want to be clear about that. Lots of the proposals in our 9 innovations that we're unveiling will require legislative changes. Will require partners in legislature to add additional investments. This is ready to go today through the rulemaking process. OSPI has the existing authority already. We will go about this as expeditiously as we can, but it's a public process as well. Folks can weigh into that rulemaking process. There will be at least 1 public hearing, if not more. It's a chance to shape that further, but ultimately this agency under my leadership and our team, we are going to honor work in a way we never have for high school students. I really want to break it down for you. Today, we have young people in the most complicated time in our history in public education. The duress and the stress on them, we see it in our research all the time. We see it in our student climate surveys. We see it in our Healthy Youth Survey. A growing number of students say they are under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, especially our high school students. They also tell us that school isn't exactly relevant in some of their content areas, or for some of them across any of them. They are looking for more connection between where they want to go and what they're learning. And don't dismiss this as students who are financially distressed who work. Lots of students work. The vast bulk of students who go on to college work, either in college or worked in high school. This is about how students choose their time. The state makes a significant investment in all of our learners, and we have 17 foundational credits we think are essential for their success. It gets them to open so many doors, but students get choice. And when they choose to work, we need to honor that. When they say those are the skills that will help me propel myself, we need to honor that as much as we do the importance of additional physical education or social studies or the arts or the other things that are so essential to our learners. Work matters. And to that young person out there today who's working a part-time job, who's going to school full-time, maybe they're involved in athletics, maybe other activities, we want to recognize the fact that you need some flexibility. And this state is prepared to deliver that. Let's take some questions from folks. I may have a comment to close it out. Again, this is the second in a series of 9. You might have questions still on the first topic, which was a significant transformation of how we invest our trust revenue to help small rural schools. But let's open it up, Katie, if there are any questions.
Don't have anyone yet.
Excellent.
First one just came in. Jeannie Lindsay with the Seattle Times. Jeannie, I'm unmuting you now.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for taking my question. I'm curious, I guess, where this idea came from. Are there other states that are doing this, or I guess what makes you, sure that this is needed in Washington? Just kind of curious what the vision, where it came from.
Great, thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate that. We think every state has some form of this. We have a form of this today. It's been in place for a long time. It just has never gotten traction because we put a lot of complexity around qualifying certain employers. In fact, most of the programs today require the students to take additional classes in addition to work just to earn the credit. So we've made it too complex. I don't know that there's other states that are going to go as sort of strategically as we are to open this up, but we do believe that virtually all states have some form of earning credits by work, but it's almost always complicated by the bureaucracy of the system of education that tries to turn it into certain subject matters, or the complexity of trying to qualify certain employers. This is available to any student who works and earns a wage. So that's the simplicity of it. I do want to comment again on that. The challenge of our history is that everyone tries to force work, even in retail or food service, into a math credit or a science credit. We're locked into this idea that it only matters to our post-secondary world if something is translated into the sort of secret code of K-12 and higher ed, which is what class did it count for? I want to be really clear. This is not for core credit. There are programs that do that. There are existing programs, very high bars to make work, where a student can get math or science credit or some other kind of core credit in work. This is elective credit. It's why it's so much more flexible, and it gives students the ability to get a little break in the rigor of their schedule, not the rigor of their learning standards, but in their schedule. And then the last thing I just want to make a comment on, because your question really illuminates this, is, why now? I've been in this role now for 5 years, which means I've been through at least 2 healthy youth survey results that we do every 2 years. And our students are telling us loud and clear, they want more control of their learning. They want more options. They want it more relevant. And a growing number of them tell us they want credit when they know something, even if it doesn't come in the form of sitting in a classroom for 180 hours. They want recognition for the skills they are learning. And this is a great way to do it with elective credit.
Next up, we have Dee Dee Sun with Cairo 7.
Thanks, Superintendent Rickdahl, for taking a few questions. You mentioned, several times the stress that students are experiencing and their desires. Last time you mentioned that, enrollment is actually doing a little bit better in terms of, recovering from the pandemic. But is this change, and are some of these other changes being done with enrollment in mind, giving students and families what they're asking for and what they're wanting to boost enrollment? Is it tied at all with enrollment goals?
It's not. I appreciate the question. It is not. Our high school system has barely seen any change in its enrollments. As you recall, the enrollment impacts to our state and most of the states in the country are in the earliest of grades, not because students came and left, but because families didn't start them in K-12. They started them in homeschool or they started them in another sector during the pandemic. So no, this is focused exclusively on high school students and the flexibility for them and the pathway building. It builds on this idea of a 2+2 high school system we've been designing for the last 4 years, 5 years, where 2 years are awfully prescribed still, but those second 2 years, we've got to open this thing up. And I think students are ready for it. They tell us they're ready for it. They're already working. They just want some recognition for that in the same way they would in traditional academic learning.
Understood. Thank you.
Next up, we have a follow-up question from Jeannie Lindsay with the Seattle Times.
Hello, me again. So I'm curious, you talked about the role that schools play in this layout that you're planning to do through rulemaking. I know you mentioned there will be public hearings and people can, offer their input. I'm curious, I guess, how you've gauged like what schools are willing to do or wanting to do in terms of this change, I guess. How long have you been working on this, and like how have you been talking with schools and even employers about making this change leading up to today?
Yeah, thank you again. So this has been obviously building for many, many years. We've done some of the first pieces of this, which is the high school and beyond plan, which will be required to be updated. So as students choose this, their high school and beyond plan will have to be updated. We've been working on this idea of a pathway requirement in high school. It's now a requirement in the state. In addition to your credits that you have to get, you also need a pathway here. So we've been building momentum towards this, and this is the next logical step, which is now within this, when students say their pathway is work, or even going to a college or university, but part of that pathway involves the skills of learning what it means to have a job, keep a job, and manage through that. This is the next logical step for us. So we've been talking to school districts, not specifically about the details of this. That's what the public process is for. But we have been telling them consistently, we are looking to make those last 2 years incredibly transformational. It will feel very different in the state to be a high school student 5 and 10 years from now for those who choose to. We have lots of students. I'd still say the bulk of them, they want to go to school. It's 6 periods a day. They want the traditional experience. That's going to be available for those students. It has been for a long time. But if we've been building for 20 years this idea of dual credit, where 35,000 high school students a year leave our high schools to go to a college campus in the form of Running Start, it's high time that students who leave our campuses to go learn about work and to engage in work and pick up those skills that they get credit for it. We've been talking to the business community about this, sort of off and on for the last couple of years. I think what they've consistently said, and there's a message in our release here from Association of Washington Business, is we know lots of students work. We know our employers are excited to have young people on the job. But from the K-12 side, historically, we've made it really, really complicated and difficult for those students to get credit for that work. And I understand that. We've got some great programs in place. You've heard about Career Connect Washington. It's fantastic. It's building a very robust pathway to not just elective credit, but core credit. Students are also earning higher ed credit, college credit through that. Most of that work takes place after us, though, and this fills in the gap of students who are working with us today. So it's been good conversations. I think folks understand it. They're excited. They obviously have an expectation, a legal requirement to serve these students as they are in a class, but they're just doing their work elsewhere. So the biggest concern for districts is, make sure apportionment still flows, make sure we still get the ability to pay that educator who's overseeing a cohort of working students. And that is consistent with what we do today. So no change to that.
We have another follow-up question from Dee Dee Sun with Power 7.
So just to clarify, the goal for this is to begin in the 2023 to 2024 school year, correct? We're not trying to get this done for next year.
Right. We would love to have gone faster, Dee Dee, but there is this public process. We will honor that completely. So it does mean time for us to hear from students, more staff, business community, parents, employers. And always what I do when I have rulemaking that is pretty significant in the way we deploy services is I give time for the legislature to step in. So This rulemaking process will initiate right away. We'll do it all fall and winter. This will give the legislature an opportunity if they want to pass legislation to make it bigger, to put constraints on it. I always want to give our lawmakers an opportunity to see that we've got a big concept here. If they act, we'll honor that and help shape it. If they don't act, then we will pursue this as described.
Understood. And then just tangentially related, since we're talking about changes that students and families have wanted to see. One thing that I've been hearing is that some families, specifically in the Seattle School District, I don't know if these changes are happening statewide, but changes that are happening to the highly capable program. And some families are feeling like the changes that have been taking place are more so, I keep on hearing the phrase, changing the system to be accessible to the lowest common denominator is what I keep hearing. And some families are frustrated with the highly capable system. I actually am not too familiar with that. It's just something I keep on hearing about again and again. Do you have anything that you might be able to add just about, what you're hearing from families and what they want, especially since the state seems to be wanting to listen and respond? What would you talk about in terms of this concern?
Yeah, thank you. So I will start by saying that phrase is always a little challenge for me. I believe every one of our students is highly capable. Every one of our students can achieve a pathway of success, and most of them can achieve significant traditional academic success while they're with us and beyond. So what that phrase tries to capture are students who are accelerating faster, whether that's a 5-year-old coming to our system or that's a high school junior or senior. And what I think we've observed in the last couple of years in legislature in particular is very bipartisan work to try to invest more from a funding standpoint in programs that help identify students who can accelerate faster, whether they're in elementary, middle, or high school. We've changed our screening tools to ensure that all students have multiple ways to demonstrate the ability to accelerate. So it's not just a single standardized exam in a single content area. So I'm very proud of what the state of Washington's done. Again, this has been a big partnership. There are always folks who want it different, and I appreciate that. I think if you're somebody who's genuine in your want for all students who are ready to accelerate to have that opportunity, then we got to get rid of some of the barriers that have held some students from accessing those programs. So that's what's been at play. I'm proud of it. It'll keep going. It won't be without folks continuing to push on that system as much as they can. But as you know, 1.1 million students all need a little bit something unique. Some are accelerating quickly. Some have a learning disability where they just need a little accommodation and they can accelerate quickly. We're going to continue to serve all of our students. And the goal of this program, for example, that we're unveiling is that for some of them, acceleration for them means I want to get to the labor market sooner and I want that learning recognized for me. So in that regard, it is responsive to a big group of students. A third of our high school juniors and seniors who today, they just quite frankly aren't getting recognition for the learning that they're doing in the labor market.
We have another follow-up question from Jeannie Lindsay with the Seattle Times.
Take it away, Jeannie.
Thanks. You talked a little bit about timing for the fall and winter and obviously allowing the legislature to weigh in. Can you give any more specificity on when people should anticipate or be on the lookout for the public hearing and comment process? Just, if they're hearing about this now and they really want to weigh in, when should they be alert to that process?
Yeah, the state of Washington has a very interesting process for rulemaking. There's an initial filing that we do, and that's the first indication that folks will have that we're changing a rule. That will happen in probably the next 30 to 45 days. It will post and describe in that rulemaking process what our public hearing schedule is. So you can expect these into the very late fall, probably over the winter, and have us wrap this up by spring. The reason we want to get started here in the next 30 to 45 days is unless we see a significant hiccup, we want school districts thinking about their master schedules and their high school systems for, again, not the upcoming school year, but the year after. You actually need to think about some of that. If you had 5, 10, 50, 100 students in your high school wanting this, you got to build capacity in that master schedule. Maybe that impacts the schedule for other offerings. So districts need a lot of time to think about how they would build master schedules around this opportunity.
Looks like we don't have any final questions.
Great. I'll just close up. Again, thanks to everyone who is engaged on this, to our students out there. We hear you. And we are asking you on a regular basis about your needs and your interests, both at the local level and the state level. And you are telling us you want more flexibility, and we're going to try to deliver that, at least for those of you who are seeking work. You've told us that work matters to you a lot. And for some of you, you have to work to support your family's needs. And that ought to be honored. To our business community, thank you so much. We know that you need young people to be excited about work. We have always had that need. And you teach them incredibly powerful skills. To all the policymakers and the parents who have said, I want my kid to not just learn sort of academic subjects, but being responsible and learning how to be on time and how to be ready for a job and financial management. That's what work can do. It's a powerful way for young people to learn those skills, sometimes the hard way, which is okay. But it is time to honor all pathways. And we've been doing it so well on the academic side for years. This fills in for students who want to work. And you're going to hear a proposal later on that's going to try to add some resources to really honor students who want that school-based but technical learning side. Those students who want to go to skill centers, who want to be in career and tech ed programs, they're going to need a little extra something as well. And we're going to talk about that in one of our 9 innovations coming up. Thanks for being a part of this. Please reach out to us if you have questions. Look for that rulemaking process. Others have suggested additional ways students can earn elective credit. We're open to all the ideas. Today, this is about work. And I thank so much our young people who choose to do that or who have to do that. You're balancing very difficult lives right now, and we're trying to honor all of the hard work that you put in. Thanks, everybody.